Hi, everybody out there. We have some, again, familiar faces with us. And today's topic, Jussie Smollett and the sentence he's received and his declaration that he is still innocent and where it goes from here. With us again is Brian Thomas, lately of the AP News Bureau in Washington, D.C., and John Woodford, a long career in editing and producing and reporting in a number of media outlets. So, gentlemen, thanks for joining us. And this is another renewed hot topic now with Smollett being sentenced to just what appears to be, what comes out to be 5 months in jail. Now, some people say, that's a light sentence considering what he did, but there's a number of black leaders that were defending him and calling for leniency, including Jesse Jackson and some of the leaders of Black Lives Matter and others. Now, is that appropriate?
John, I'll let you go first.
Well, they have a right, everybody can campaign for whatever they want, whether the justice system or goes along with it. But obviously, if you're a celebrity or wealthy, which usually goes together in our country, but sometimes doesn't. But we know that money talks in this country, and fame. So he traded on it. Of course, it's regrettable in some ways. On the other hand, I don't think it's going to encourage anyone to emulate him. It's good that he got some kind of punishment, because obviously he's not the only one to use that kind of phony attack. But then I'm thinking, what happened with the Kyle, what's his name, who shot the people and killed two of them up in Wisconsin? Didn't he get off?
I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse?
Yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah, he got off, yeah.
Yeah, so, it's strange things can happen in this country to people accused of serious crimes. He takes a gun and goes up with the intent, obviously, of using his gun. And yet, because we have our gun worship here, it was decided that he used his gun in a way that was sanctioned.
Well, actually, we have a big disagreement on this, John. It was clearly self-defense. No,
I know. I'm saying it was sanctioned use of a gun, but you got to say he got a gun. He transported it. He went there. He's not a law an agent of the law, so he actually went there looking for an opportunity. And he used his gun on somebody.
Yeah, he was looking for trouble, and he found it. That's what happened.
And he found it.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, that's subject to interpretation too. He was part of a group of people where they're going there defending property.
He's a vigilante.
Now you could say it was bad judgment on his part, but I mean, I don't think these two cases can compare.
I'm just saying that there are ways. You can do bad things in this country, because I mean, going up there when you don't have to, so you wind up excusably killing people, but you got away with that one.
Well,
sometimes
I think
you get away with it.
That's right. But I think with Jesse's situation, here's a guy that cooks up this whole scheme, pays these two guys to stage this attack, and the only reason that this came unraveled was because these two guys were going to get jackpotted here in the legal system and decided to, reveal the whole plot to save their own tails. So you can't get away from the fact that that Jussie was behind this, that whatever motive he was using to do this was flawed, and he forced the community in Illinois to spend an awful lot of money to dig up this case and dissect it and finally unearth it, and that's pretty inexcusable, considering the whole thing was a ruse to start with. So I would think that if he complains about 150 days in prison, he should shut his mouth, because he's very lucky it wasn't longer.
Yeah, he got a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, really. I think it was quite I don't know what the sentencing guidelines are technically for that kind of offense, but it seemed like a fairly light sentence. Now, another thing that people are saying is that in terms, again, of race relations, this is a setback because now people who are genuinely victims of a hate crime may tend not to believe right away or immediately or at all because of what Smollett did.
Or step forward if they are a victim to say something publicly for fear of not having anything being done about it.
Yeah, and he's still proclaiming his innocence as he's being ushered out of the courtroom. He's screaming loudly, he's innocent, he didn't do this. And also, another wrinkle is he's setting the stage for Act 2 of a deceptive episode by screaming that he is not suicidal. If something happens to him in prison, he didn't do it to himself. Like he's not going to be Epstein if he could help it. So what's going on there?
The damage you've done to yourself is way beyond anything else that can happen to you from me or any other judge that would be sentencing you in this criminal case. You are now a permanently convicted felon. Your family who loves you and supports you, I don't even want to use the word forgive because forgiveness isn't even necessary. They're with you so much. They're so tight-knit, but you have to live with the fact that you really put them through a ringer. You've embarrassed your valuable friends in high places, the elected public officials, people in the media. You've embarrassed them. You have to live with that. I don't know if those relationships can be repaired. You've become toxic in your own workplace. Your career future is uncertain at very best. It was really on a rocket ship to success, and now you've turned yourself into riches to rags, and it's so unfortunate. Your very name has become an adverb for lying, and I cannot imagine what could be worse than that. I'm trying to consider who you are as a person, how you got here, how somehow you strayed away from your family values, you let that dark, narcissistic, selfish, and arrogant side come out, and you persisted with it for years on this case. I'm fashioning the following sentence, and here's your sentence. I'm sentencing you to 30 months felony probation, and the probation is going to be to this court. You're going to be allowed to travel wherever you want. You do not have to live in the state of Illinois. You can report by phone. I know that if you're going to try to make a living and do some of the things you do, you may have to go to other places, New York and Los Angeles. You can do those things. You will pay restitution to the city of Chicago in the amount of $120,106. You are fined $25,000, which is the maximum fine. And you will spend the first 150 days of your sentence in the Cook County Jail. And that will start today, right here, right now.
No, I would just like to say to Your Honor that I am not suicidal. That's what I would like to say.
Okay.
I am not suicidal.
Okay.
I am not suicidal. I am innocent, and I am not suicidal. If I did this, then it means that I stuck my fist in the fears of Black Americans in this country for over 400 years and the fears of the LGBTQ community. Your Honor, I respect you and I respect the jury, but I did not do this. And I am not suicidal. And if anything happens to me when I go in there, I did not do it to myself. And you must all know that. I respect you, Your Honor. I respect your decision. Jail time, I am not suicidal.
Okay. Mr. Uche, let me inquire, are there any post-sentencing motions you care to present? Court is adjourned.
I am not suicidal. I am not suicidal, and I am innocent. I could have said that I was guilty a long time ago.
Well, he's obviously has some mental issues also. Not, he's obviously a messed up guy. His, I see he got his mother or grandmother and others to come out. I mean, they opened up all the kinds of sympathy-inducing tricks of the trade that they could to get him a light sentence. And as you say, he ought to be happy that he got a sentence that light.
Sure.
And he's never has really, as far as I can see, admitted that this was a despicable kind of thing to do.
Also, what I find interesting, since we've all been in the media for decades, is how much of the media was taken in by this, right in the beginning. It swallowed it lock, stock, and barrel.
Mhm.
Defending him, a sympathetic portrayal of him. Nobody bothered to even think about what at least appeared to be possibly fishy circumstances. So what does that say about the media?
Well,
I
I think,
told, yeah,
yeah, go ahead, John.
I lived in Chicago quite some time, and when it happened, I told my wife and daughter, I said, that is one fishy story. The
Mm.
whole thing stinks. It sounds like I said it sounds phony because um, the circumstances of being attacked by two Trump people in a
Wearing
in a
MAGA hats.
generally black neighborhood in Chicago at that time of night, you know, these it just
Yeah.
doesn't. I said this doesn't smell right to me, you know.
And they said this is Trump country.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Part of
And
it.
then when I saw him or some of his, I mean, he just looked like you know, a nut.
Well, I think you're right. I think he's got some emotional issues that are really
Yeah.
deep. But secondly, you know, if the Chicago police had not unearthed these other two guys and found them, you know, he might have gotten away with it if they hadn't been found and located.
Yeah.
So that's another whole sticky issue right there. And God knows how many other crimes of this type are perpetrated by people who want attention and do get away with it.
Well, don't forget, the way I remember it, the first prosecutor exonerated him. You know,
Mhm. Yeah.
didn't bring charges or drop charges.
No.
And then it was somebody else who pushed for reopening the case, and that's how it came apart. And the two guys who we paid to do the dirty work, I mean, they're kind of obvious that they're on a surveillance camera. They were buying the goods that
Yeah.
they needed for the.
Yeah.
Not the two brightest bulbs, no.
And,
You know,
and I guess he wrote out a check to them as well.
Yeah.
is that how it? How did I'm trying to remember how it broke first? Whether it was the footage or the holes in it began to emerge that he was seen talking to two. Well, they were African guys, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
from Nigeria, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there must have been some footage that had him talking to people in the area.
Yeah.
Maybe they were wearing the same clothing as the people later filmed beating him up. If that was
Well, there was surveillance footage from inside the store where they bought the rope and I guess.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know,
Yeah.
he did write them out a check, claiming that was for their services. I guess as trainers. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't really well thought out ahead of time. But again, let's get back to how the media swallowed this. I mean, you know, there were obvious red flags there. Even if you didn't want to say it's a phony to begin with, at least start asking some questions. You know, be somewhat skeptical of it. And again, Brian, what does that say about today's media?
Well, I think they were willing to give this guy the benefit of the doubt because he was a celebrity. There's no question about that. And then only when other factors in this case started to become more talked about and more open, did prosecutors take another look at it. So you're right. I think the media probably should have done a more intense job of looking at this right from the get-go. But you've got that star status, you know, it's just that's the problem.
I think it was a lot more than star status. I think it was the progressive woke element. It was a black man attacked by white racists, especially Trump supporters. So they really jumped on board with that narrative that you know, here's another hate crime against poor black people that these white supremacist Trump supporters were out to get. You know, it went along with what the liberal media has been pushing all along. I mean, that was the real component driving their lack of skepticism, not just celebrity status. But yeah, I mean, O.J. Simpson wasn't given this much of a break. He was brought to trial. So, I mean, yeah, and this gets back to how so much of the mainstream media is so locked into this racial narrative. And again, I say it's counterproductive because you get incidents like this, and they still haven't, said, oh, we were in error. They just skip over the story. And, it's counterproductive to race relations, because when you get something like this, some of the genuine white bigots say, sure, this is what happened because it was black, they bent over backwards to give them a break. So every time something like this happens, pushed and endorsed and reinforced by the liberal media, it is a setback to race relations. What do you think, John?
Well, I don't know if it has that effect, but I do not like to see people coming to his defense and not even denouncing the immorality of what he did, and the fact that this kind of, to even think of this sort of thing, let alone do it as a sign of, political, it's evil politics, and this is not, shouldn't be part of civil rights, supposed civil rights movement activity. That he should be denounced. And a lot of the criticism of him I see was somewhat, sort of treating him with kid gloves. And accepting a lot of the reporting in the beginning, whatever he said was often presented as if it was true, which I've seen in many, I see it in our major political announcements too. Well, they'll just report, instead of reporting something as an opinion or an allegation,
right,
and always keeping that clear, the reporters start acting as if they can determine that this is absolute truth because someone they like said it, and they skip over the hedging. They don't want to say alleged or anything.
And this goes beyond color. I mean, white people get breaks like that too, if they're part of the circle, part of the team, part of the narrative, and they're not asked questions either. Their feet aren't held to the fire. So it crosses all kinds of racial and ethnic divides there.
It does, and that's why there should be more attention paid to the proper way to report things. When you know that when all it is an opinion, then that's the way it should be reported.
And again, John, as we've both agreed a number of times, there is no longer objective reporting. Opinion is presented as fact. It's even written into the stories that way, or presented that way when an anchor is reading the teleprompter. I mean, there's no distinction anymore, between a clear distinction between what's an opinion and what is established fact. They label their opinions as facts right off the bat, and therefore it becomes fact with most people who listen that don't do any research beyond the headlines. Brian, I mean, you've been part of this too, Brian. What do you think?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, just look back to what Fox News started. I mean, Fox News put all this, fair and balanced, and that was anything but. They got away with it for years, and all of a sudden the narrative was driving the facts in many of the stories they were covering. So it's not surprising that this then spilled over into other parts of the media on the other side of the fence. I'm not surprised by that at all.
Yeah.
I
think, Fox started it. I agree with that. But then the other networks, the other outlets picked up on it because Fox was getting good ratings.
Of course, yeah, sure.
So now it's all become a ratings battle, and truth be damned.
Yeah, I think there's an old saying, there's two guys are standing on the edge of the river, relieving themselves and seeing who can shoot farther. And I think that's unfortunately what the media has now become. They're just in this competition for listeners and notoriety, and it's poisonous to the whole system. And I don't know what the solution is going to be, but I know what we have now is certainly not healthy.
Well, also a lot of that, as you mentioned before, Brian, is because everything now is profit driven with these outlets, including the news divisions, which was not the case years ago.
That's right.
Well, a lot of look, when I broke into this business, and you came in a little bit later, but when I broke into this business, CBS and ABC and NBC were suddenly realizing that we could make a lot of money with these evening newscasts, because you didn't have the internet in those days. People
Right.
had to rely on that sort of information vehicle. And they suddenly realized, hey, we can make a lot of money with news. And that transferred down to the state and local level, because radio and television stations then decided to emulate that and do their own local newscasts and sell them to local clients. So news made money for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Because it was fair, well, mostly fair, and it was effective in terms of getting local messages out to local people. That's the hook right here. If you can, all politics are local, they say. Well, if you do news locally and you do it well and you do it fairly, it should work. And I think we've stumbled along the way here somewhere. And I don't know if we're going to get back up on our feet.
Well, wait a minute, you were saying they were making money when they were being fair and objective?
Well, yes, I'm saying that, when you and I broke into this business, we had sponsors in our local newscasts,
Yeah.
banks and local businesses. They were more than happy to put money up front to bring the news to people on the local level and on larger stations on a state level. I saw no instance at that point in my career of the kind of crap that's going on now. None whatsoever.
But then they realized they could make a lot more money if they became cheerleaders rather than objective reporters.
Well, that's true. I mean, because it's easier to sell stuff if it's homogenized in one local place, and you don't have to worry about someone doing a story that doesn't agree with the narrative. I understand that, but that doesn't exonerate the abuses we've seen today.
Well, don't forget also, when it started off, network newscasts were 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
Then, they started expanding. I think actually Ted Koppel started expanding it with special reports and continuing reports on the Iran hostage crisis. And then when cable news came in, CNN and all that, where they had to fill all these endless hours of news, it was more important than ever to keep people glued to the screen in between time. And that's where all this emphasis on making profits and on shaping stories to please the audience came in.
Well, just to please the audience, it was to please stockholders.
Which is the same thing as pleasing the audience, because they bring in the ratings.
That's right. So, I think that, it's pretty sad, that the profit centers are defining the actions of many journalists, not all, but many. And, I don't know what the solution is going to be in the long term.
You won't get a job. You won't keep a job, a prominent job, I don't think, if you don't play ball with the storylines nowadays. I mean, look at the way this current Ukraine thing is covered. It's
and that'll be our next topic when we get to the other.
Yeah, that's you can't. And the real news would be like a lost leader to a corporation.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, look, they used to have news bureaus. All the major papers had foreign news bureaus all over the. We know they've shrunk by 80 or 90%. I don't know what. It's horrendous shrinking of who's going to have any kind of foreign correspondence. And then those who are foreign correspondents are very much vetted. Now, when I was on the national desk at the New York Times, the foreign desk was right kitty corner. Whenever those people were in any area that the Pentagon or CIA or State Department was a sensitive area, all of the correspondents go to Washington before they even come back to the office, where they are debriefed. And of course, that usually meant that the kind of people that were being selected for those jobs were people that those in Washington could get along with. Very few were like Seymour Hersh or Sidney Shanberg. They were ones who they thought they had under control, but they didn't.
Yeah.
Those were few and far between.
Yeah.
Most of them played ball because your career, your books, and everything else would be greased if you know you're golden if you're the right kind of foreign correspondent. So they didn't buck the system that much. But Seymour Hersh, when he had a story, he said, "Fire me! I'll take the story somewhere else." And the fact that there was a little bit of competition then, especially they didn't want the Washington Post,
Yeah.
to get anything, and that gave some leverage, which you had to be a courageous reporter. But as I say, those people are few and far between.
Necessity.
All right, getting back to Jussie Smollett, my question would be, is he going to make a comeback when he gets out?
Well,
I imagine there are people in Hollywood or the showbiz trying to figure out, is he marketable to some extent or another? I wonder. I'm sure if they can figure out, if they can get more viewers looking at him and cast him as a villain or some kind of creepy role, we're likely to see him emerge from all of this. But you were talking before about the effect. It had an effect on me, and I still haven't settled it, because when they had the report of these threats against the Black universities, I had to wonder, and I'm still wondering. I don't take when I hear a report of these threats, if I don't see any substantial evidence of who's behind it, I don't make an assumption. Why should I don't of who's behind it? Because it's possible that it's a phony or part phony or 30%. You don't know. Once you have this phenomenon in a society, you can't just start reporting stuff and then assume that you know who's doing it when you don't.
That's right.
So I don't know who's doing it until I see evidence. And if they say they have evidence, well, then come out with it and show us who's making these threats. But otherwise, as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't get all so hot and bothered about them as believable, concerning threats until someone tells us why. Why are these threats serious?
Or what are the threats?
What are they?
Lay out the evidence. Just don't say there have been threats.
Right. Threat to do what? What, to whom, where? And did they say is the same language? Let's hear about it.
Yeah.
Is it similar language? Is it different language? Is it what?
That's another trick that the press uses. They generalize so much without really being specific. And then how do you argue with that? Or, how do you take that as face value? But with Smollett, don't forget the saying that no publicity is bad publicity. And considering the worship of celebrity in this country, even if he comes out as a villainous character, that in itself is marketable.
It could be.
I think you're right. I think this guy could well, parlay this whole thing into something for him, for his pocketbook that would be advantageous. Who knows? It's hard to know how the general public, and more importantly, producers of television programs are going to react to this whole situation, especially with the Black Power salute when he left the courtroom. I think that didn't do him any good there. And I think that people who might have been willing to give him the benefit of the doubt might be more skittish to do it now.
I think he's still going to be a marketable commodity when it comes out. And perhaps, again, this Epstein thing, he doesn't want to be Epstein. Is he going to claim that that white supremacist Trump-wearing MAGA hat rated with him, try to hang him in jail? I mean, where this is going to go?
Hey, hey.
But the way the media works, if you're a celebrity, good or bad publicity, it keeps you in the news, and that in itself makes you marketable. So I don't think we've seen the last of Jussie.
Oh no. Oh no.
Probably have not. I don't know.
That's right. I think you're right.
Yeah. And it's getting to the point you say, God, at least he didn't murder or rape someone. It's you have a whole scale now.
Yeah,
that's right.
Who can come back in?
Yeah, all he did was turn the city of Chicago upside down.
Cost them a lot of money.
Millions of dollars to investigate.
Right.
So, last words concerning Jussie Smollett. Bryant first, and then John.
Well, I think we'll see him again. I think he's not done. He's going to try to come back. And whether he's successful to the degree that he was prior to this little incident in Chicago remains to be seen. It all depends on who wants to take a chance on this guy, and more importantly, if he behaves himself in the future.
John?
Well, I wonder whether he's capable of behaving. I hope that he gets whatever treatment he needs, because he's obviously, to conceive this, to carry it out, you have to be a completely demented, amoral, cynical individual, and such a raving, self-aggrandizing, notion of how important you are, that he knows no bounds. So whatever's in that head, I think he needs a lot of therapy and a lot of care. Of course, a lot of actors are goofy. We know that.
Mhm.
He might be in the right profession for it, but I wouldn't hire him unless he got thoroughly, ventilated by someone to say that he was, that he understood right from wrong. Because he obviously, right now, I still don't think he understands right from wrong.
See, I disagree, John. I don't think he was, demented, psychotic, all these issues. I think it was merely he didn't think out ahead of time how to do this right. And we see this across the board with
Who
celebrities.
would think of doing such a thing?
That's right. That's exactly right. Why would you do it?
Why would someone think that this was a great thing to do? You have to be sick.
Well, no, the backstory, if it's accurate, is that he was in contract negotiations and she was trying to get a better upgrade in his salary. So he figured with this kind of publicity, the producers would be paying him more money. That was a story anyway. So,
Yeah.
So, he had a profit motivation. And, which of these celebrities and other people don't have profit motivations that have them do all kinds of shenanigans, but usually they're a little smarter about it, or they get a break on it. I mean, this blew up in his face, I think, largely because he was so sloppy about it. But I don't think this is so much out of the ordinary, and again, across the color board, black, white, yellow, whatever ethnicity, people do this all the time for a financial advantage. It's just that he got caught because I think he, wasn't smart enough to figure out how to do it with any kind of.
But the kind of people who do this sort of thing, they've got something wrong with. I mean, this is sort of like the kind of person who didn't the person drive his wife or kids off a dock and then say that two black people did it. There was some kind of case, this is the kind of thing that is. Well, these people who do that sort of thing, they're really something terribly wrong with them. Terribly wrong with them. That this is the kind of conflict they even want to imagine that they would like to promote in our society. That that they're demented.
You remember Susan Smith in Union?
That's the one.
In South Carolina. She's the one who drove the car into the water, the lake, and drowned her kids, and then said, this black person was behind it. And, and everybody bought into that for the first few days until it became implausible for this to stand on its own feet.
Yeah.
So, this is not the first time. You're right.
No.
This is not the first time this.
She didn't have a future. She didn't have a good future either.
Yeah, right. And that's right. That's right.
Well, you see,
Or she had killed people, but
there's a big here. I think there's a big distinction in the Susan Smith case and other cases like that. These people are really psychotic, whatever. To kill your own kids.
Mhm.
Smollett, there was really no violence there, except what he made up to be an attack on him. So, to me, this was just a conniving method to increase his salary and increase his prominence. As so many other people do in many different professions. It's just that he was not smart enough to do it in a way that he wouldn't be caught. Obvious, but don't forget, he also got a break in the beginning where there were no charges, or the charges were dropped, which was outrageous in itself.
Oh yeah, right.
And I think what was it? Michelle Obama called the prosecutor and talked to her about it, or one of the black leaders. I think also he had a feeling that he had an inside track on support from Black leaders and personalities, and that would be another way that he would get his way without being caught. So, again, I just see this as a guy who's conniving and just wasn't able to pull it off. But this goes on all the time across the board, ethnicity, color, everything. And again, there's no. So what I'm saying is, I don't think he has to be really demented, psychotic, to engage in something like this.
Well, it's the old bit is, if you get caught, all of a sudden the whole game changes. You're right. And he got caught.
But I mean, again, my parting word is stay tuned, because I'm wondering if he's setting up part 2 of this whole thing by saying that, he's not suicidal.
God help us.
We'll see. Okay, guys, Brian Thomas and John Woodford, thanks again for being with us. And we'll be back with an update on Ukraine.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you.
Okay. See ya.